Okay. Okay. So if you remember where we left off last time, we looked at rates of abstinence based on a relapse without treatment. So we found that just someone kind of cold turkeying it without help or assistance of some type, less than 50% of people maintain their sobriety, as you would say, past about 12 months. Okay. In fact, we can look at the third month and we're already under 50% of people have maintained their sobriety. So this kind of shows the importance of a continued prevention strategy of some type in order to help people continue to abstain from use. So this is kind of why we're looking at this tertiary type of prevention because we'd like to help these individuals stay on track with what they want with their sobriety or their at least reduction in substance use. Um, so I kind of want to explain kind of the cognitive behavioral model of relapse prevention, and I just kind of want to break down the words cognitive behavioral. We probably all heard these terms, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, those kinds of things, and kind of what is it that cognitive behavioral therapy attempts to do, okay? Cognitive behavioral comes from two kind of camps within the field of psychological research. It comes from what's known as behaviorism, which focuses on changing the behavior of the individual, and cognitive psychology or cognition, which is um, understanding people's thought processes, and if those thought processes are not have dysfunction in them. It's helping them change the way they think about their situation. Okay. Cognitive behavioral kind of combines the thing. It assumes that we in within an environment, we have a combined cognitive behavioral response that but what the goal is to try and help a person both behaviorally resist relapse or and cognitively. Okay, so we're going to work on their thinking process, but we're also going to put in behavioral coping responses that will hopefully help uh, um, um, uh, uh, prevent the potential of a relapse. Okay. So what you see here, this model here is two kind of different routes based on this model. So we come across a high risk situation. Often this is called a triggering situation. It is a situation which induces things like cravings, drives to drink or use substance. Um, and we can go two routes. Okay. Initially, if we have effective coping responses, so this would be thought stoppers on a cognitive level. It would be behavioral changes, implementing different behaviors within a given context, those kinds of things. This and it leads us out of that high risk situation without use. This increases our self-efficacy, which our self-efficacy is our belief that we can actually do something. In this case, it's the self-efficacy that I can deal with my triggers in a healthy, coping manner. And then this in the future leads to a decrease in the probability of a relapse. Okay. In the relapse process, if we have ineffective coping skills to deal with that given situation, that then leads to a decrease in self-efficacy, that positive outcome expectancy. And what this really is this is the thought, for example, that, you know what, um, I will only I'll only have one beer and I'll be fine and I'll just enjoy the buzz. It'll be okay. Or I'll know when to stop. Okay. Um, I really want to go, and I think I could go there, even though everyone else is drinking. I'll bring my Diet Coke with me and I'll be fine. It's those ineffective coping responses that really turn into a justification to initiate that ritualized behavior. Okay. So we get so it leads to then what's called a lapse. Okay. Why is this called a lapse? Because this is the initial use of substance. Okay. This is that kind of, let's say the person has not used for 2 to 3 weeks. Okay. And so they hit that initial drink. And what that's going to do is give them a false sense of control, but it's also going to give them that first sense of euphoria that they've been looking for, that what they in the alcohol world call that buzz, that initial relaxation, that like, okay, it's good. And this is why it's called a lapse, because at this point, there's still things we could do to stop the situation from becoming a full relapse. Just because someone had one can of beer or one shot of whiskey doesn't necessarily mean they will go through the full relapse process. There's still things that they could put in place to say, okay, that was fine, that's good. Behaviorally, I either need to get out of here. Cognitively, I need to uh, uh, stick to I'm going to drink Diet Coke tonight. That's all I'm going to drink. And those kind of coping strategies can still be put in place. Okay. Um, but if we don't have those coping abilities in place, this can lead to that perceived effect of the substance, that initial good feeling, then can lead to increase in violation of abstaining, meaning that first one, there's this breaking point between going into full addictive use or not. And this increases the probability that there'll be a relapse if, again, there's those coping skills, that ability to say, okay, this was fine. I had my one beer. I'm going to go. Or this is fine. I had my one beer. I need to go sit with someone else. I need to go talk. I need to grab my Diet Coke. I need to do some type of strategy to avoid continued use. Okay. So, and to be honest with you, this is for most individuals who go through a relapse. This is the most dangerous point, is between the lapse and the relapse, because they feel like they can control it. And physiologically, the body starts to crave more. And so it will start making the person feel nauseous. It'll give them a headache. So that initial feeling will start to fade. And as the body wants more, it makes you feel like you're getting sick. You need something. And so that can also lead to a relapse as well. So there's both the psychological and behavioral aspects, but then there's also that physiological aspect to that relapse. Okay. So let's talk about some specific intervention strategies. Okay. Um, so again, the top one we're going with, uh, uh, let me think. We're going with different strategies as we go through this situation. So we enter into a high risk situation. Okay. And so some strategies for kind of helping a person um, get through this high risk situation is one, having them do high levels of what's called self-monitoring, and going through, okay, what am I feeling? What is my situation? What am I thinking? Um, we can also have them do a few different inventories, or we can at least let them have them mentally do this. Okay, so inventory of drug taking situations. How many times have I been able to use substance and it not made me lead to more use in substance? Okay, that simple question can be enough to trigger a coping situation. The second one, the third one is a, kind of this drug taking confidence questionnaire. How confident are you in getting out of that situation and dealing with it? On this other end of high risk uh, situations, we have them describe past relapses. What did they resolve in versus what are called relapse fantasies? Okay, often when a person gets in a high risk situation, they start to crave, they only fantasize about the good times in use. They only fantasize about the time that they sang karaoke and they had fun with friends and all of those things, and they forget the times that they destroyed furniture, physically hurt other people, woke up the next day not being able to go to work. Um, got into legal problems. And so, in a high risk situation, helping a person uh, be able to recall the actual full situation instead of falling into a relapse fantasy, then initiating behavioral skills such as avoidance, such as escape behaviors, such as exposure behaviors to deal with that high risk situation. Okay. So let's talk about then ineffective coping methods. So what could we put in place? Okay. While we know that meditation, relaxation training, stress management are effective in these two situations, in efficacy enhancing imagery about who the person wants to be, having them build an idea of who they'll be as a a sober individual instead of where they've been. Okay. I will say that on the market right now, if you go to Amazon or anywhere else, there's a whole bunch of supplements that try to provide the relaxation experience and everything else that, for example, alcohol provides in order to help with this relaxation and meditation. I do not recommend them because none of them are FDA approved. But there's a whole market out there, and that's something I want you to realize. There's a whole market out there to try and help people um, um, get that relaxed point, to get out of that anxiety moment that drives use, that need and that anxiety and stress to go and buy that bottle of tequila or go get that drug from whoever. And it's become a whole market out there, and there's all kinds of drinks and supplements. And so this is a big area that we have found that can help people manage when we get to this place where when we're at that moment where we're gonna use, we don't feel like we have enough control in our life. And we expect by drinking, it's going to relieve my stress, my anxiety. I'm going to feel good. Nothing bad's going to happen this time situation. This and then an efficacy enhancing imagery, having the person remember why they decided to stop using, um, helping them imagine who they want to be instead of what they're going to be by relapsing. And then on the other end of this, on at least the ineffective coping response is coping skill training. So once we have them in a meditative relax mode, We have them remembering why they don't use. Then we need to have some coping skills, something that replaces that ritualized behavior of substance use. So it might be, if we use an AA example, a coping skill is calling your sponsor. It might be going and donating some time. It may be watching your favorite movie. Some All kinds of different coping strategies that can be put in place that can replace that ritualized behavior that leads to use. Okay. And that's kind of the coping skill training thing. Now, I will say that the one thing that I recognized as a clinician, one of the mistakes that often is made in the coping skill training is they have individuals focus on just one or two coping strategies. Okay. What really is recommend is you give them a whole basket of coping strategies, that it's just not either go volunteer somewhere or call your sponsor. It may be watching a movie. It may be going in for a bike ride. It may be doing something. And so that the individual doesn't just, it isn't just limited to just one strategy. Okay. All right. So going on, this is the person who's not confident. What can be put in place? And with that positive outcome expectancy, they're thinking that that's only going things are going to be better this time. I'm going to control it. I'm going to have a good time. Well, again, these strategies, I keep doing that. These strategies of relaxation, but also this one is where this one becomes very important, is is having them remember who they want to be, and that substance is not going to lead them to that place they want to go. But there's two other strategies that we can put in place as well. Okay. Um, on this end, we can put contract to limit extent of use. So when we have individuals who um, um, may not want to abstain, but they want to reduce their drinking. So they just want to reduce the amount they drink. As a therapist or a counselor, you can do what's called a contract with them to limit their use. So, and that they're bound by that contract in some way. All right. So, that's one way you can do it. Okay. And some of these contracts are punitive. Some of them are extensions of help. So what some contracts say, so okay, you can have two beers on Friday night. But the contract says if they have a third beer, you have to call your sponsor. Okay. Some contracts say, for example, people who are court ordered, for example, if you have more than this, it will be 1 day in jail. Okay. Or something like that. Now, you can only do that with high functioning addicts, those who really take into account their behaviors matter. But even with non-criminal based ones, you could do different things such as therapy sessions, rewards for sticking with the contract, all of those things. The other thing that often is used and is good is at this point doing reminder cards, what to do if you slip. And so you can even buy these pre-ordered. So a person slips, they break open this little bag of things, and there's these reminder cards of different things they can do if they started to drink already. Okay. Sometimes, sometimes this strategy sometimes is used early on where people put post-its throughout their house. And so, I had a good friend who was a heavy addict, and so we went throughout his house and we put these little motivational statements and reminders of why not to use. Even on his front door, we had to put a sign that says, "Don't answer the door for," and we listed certain people that he couldn't answer the door for because he was that his cognitive ability to kind of strategize on not to use was not there. He had to have that literal external reminder. And sometimes people need that, especially if they've used drugs that have inhibited their cognitive abilities. It's not because they're stupid or or whatnot, it's because their short-term memory has been compromised to the point that those reminder cards and those post-its are a good way to help them navigate their addiction. Okay. Education about immediate and versus delayed effects, reminding them of the hangover versus the euphoria of immediate use. And then other strategies are providing what's called a decision matrix. Okay, so what do I do when I hit a certain point? The decision matrix goes beyond just one point, though. So it might say, what do I do when I drink 2 beers? What about a 6 pack, a 12 pack? So throughout the line, when the person comes to a realization that they shouldn't be using, they can go to that decision matrix and go, I've really overdone it. What should I do at this point? Okay. So let's go then to the abstain violation effect. What do we do at this level? This is the cognitive restruct. And this is a lapse is a mistake. Okay. Coping versus fault. This goes back to what we were talking about. And having them recognize that just because they did that one lapse does not mean they have to go into a relapse, and that they can accept a mistake, they can get through it, but that doesn't mean they have to go through the entire relapse addictive process again. They still can cognitive cope with it. We can restructure it as a mistake of coping versus a mistake because I'm just an addict. That's who I am. I need to accept it. That's what I am. I'm a loser. I'm never going to be able to escape those drugs. Those are all cognitive errors. That's the drug talking, as you would say. The drug has them and it's going, you're worthless without me. Okay. And so we go through and we help them cognitively restructure that event instead of them coming up with those justified reasons for continued use. Okay, so this is one strategy. And again, guys, there's a lot of relapse strategies. This is just one of the kind of gold standards, as you would say. It's been very well researched, all of those kinds of things. So let's look at efficacy of what happens when someone goes through relapse prevention. Okay, so. So just on the skills training level, as you can see, so this is how many people have been able to have used since in 1 year. So these are individuals who have gone through the skills training part of relapse prevention. And then this is what's called a combined control. So these are individuals who either have received no treatment, maybe they're going through a drug treatment, maybe they're going through medication treatment, maybe they are doing just AA. So there's a combined, it's kind of a controlled thing, okay? But just at the skills training level, we can see after 1 year about 5.1% of individuals were able to went into relapse, I should say. Okay. But oh, no, wait. Yeah. And then hmm, I'm getting this backwards. So just skills training alone versus this combined thing. Okay. So combining, so skills training alone resulted in only 5.1% being successful. I'm sorry, I got this backwards, gang. Only 5.1% of individuals were able to um, not relapse after 1 year. However, when you do all of the relapse prevention with all of those steps, not just skills training, we see that 44, we're getting up to that half, were able to abstain from relapse in a 1 year time. Okay. Um, if we look at, for example, I'm getting this one wrong. Hold on. Okay, here's the one I wanted to get to. Okay. Um, when we look at, for example, relapse prevention versus control, and this one makes a little bit more sense than the last one. So here we are 12 months after treatment with relapse prevention. Here we are at day 0, and this is a percentage baseline drinking. Okay. So we see that at day 0, we still have greater than 50% drinking. The control is under that. These are people who went through detox and all those kinds of things. And we can see the effectiveness of relapse prevention within this graph. If we look at the people who went through relapse prevention, by the 12-month mark, geez, by the 12-month mark, just about 10 to 15% had went through some type of relapse or back to drinking. Okay. But if we look at the control means that there's other methods of treatment. So they didn't go through relapse prevention, but maybe they do something like just AA or they do something like that. We can see that the relapse went way up after the initial treatment. So this would be initial treatment, and then this is follow after. They go through this relapse process, but you can see that there's not a huge gain from treatment to 12 months. We're almost right back at the same point that they started at. Okay. So what this indicates is that this is an effective prevention strategy and that it should be, and the multi-pronged approach is really effective at reducing the chances that people will continue to use after treatment. Okay. And this is some examples that have been used. So you remember this is our relapse prevention. One method of treatment besides relapse prevention is aversion training. So this is where one example is a pharmacological one. So there's a form of aversion treatment that the medication that once you drink a bottle of beer, because of that medication, it makes you nauseous and makes you throw up. Okay, that's a version of that's a that's a version of aversion therapy is that pharmacological way. Other ways is that they pair drink alcohol with aversive photos or something like that. That's aversion training. Okay. And as you can see, the control, we just have a control here, and you can see that it's really not effective at all. Okay, compared to again going down to our relapse prevention strategy. Okay. So again, I'll just kind of emphasize this point and we'll wrap up today. Um, is that relapse prevention does not usually prevent lapse better than other active treatments, but is more effective in relapse management. So when we talk about the lapse, those are things that are pretty normal in an individual's life, that they will kind of go test that water. And relapse prevention is no better at preventing those than just that initial treatment. Hence, if we go back here on these graphs, these right here, these initial numbers after treatment, those are lapses. Okay, these are lapse. And then we see they implemented those relapse prevention strategies and then they reduced. While in this case, they increased and then they went back to that initial baseline. Okay. So so that's something to keep in mind is it's not going to prevent that first kind of testing the water, but it will help them get through that and help them teach them that they can control their drinking, they can control what they're going through. Okay. Particularly effective in maintaining treatment effects over a long follow-up measure. This has been shown for 1 to 2 years. Delayed emergent in which greater improvement coping over time. So this has a substantial, it improves over time and may be most effective more impaired substance abusers, including those more severe levels of substance use. What we do find is relapse prevention is more effective the more severe the addiction is, and kind of stops being effective when we have individuals who are just kind of on that bus between overuse and addictive substance use. Okay. I think we've already gone over these. All right. So that's where I want to stop for the sake of this class in understanding relapse prevention. Does anybody have any question about the relapse prevention process at this moment before we get into more public health type strategies using this method? Does anybody have any questions or comments?
No, not at this time.
Thank you, Deshana. Oh, thank you. Thank you.